Jeff Minick was here at Benedictine College to offer a lecture for the President's Leadership class. He has been a longtime teacher, author, and writer touching on culture, history, and life lessons. We invited him to the studio to discuss his work at the Epoch Times and numerous other publications. Benedictine College is transforming culture in America, one conversation at a time. From our studios in Atchison, Kansas, these are the Benedictine Dialogues. All right. Well, Jeff, welcome to campus. Thank you so much for coming by the studio. I've been looking forward to chatting with you, and I'm really happy you're here on campus.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's been a great day so far.
Wonderful.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful day today, actually, with some great weather, so it kind of warmed up a little bit.
It is gorgeous. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're here to offer a lecture for President Menace's leadership class, and I'd love if you could share maybe a bit of a sneak peek of some of what you might share, the insights you're going to share with our students.
Sure. Okay. Well, this takes place at 4 o'clock today, and I'm anticipating about 40 maybe students, and visited the hall. It looks perfect for the lecture, and I used to teach, so I'm going to take the approach of my teaching instead of doing a formal lecture. It'll be a lecture, and basically I start out by introducing myself. I have one funny story to start with, but I don't know if you want to hear that on here. And then I'm going to make 6 points for the students, and then give them what I hope is extremely good news at the end for all of them to hear. And so the 6 points, let's see if I can remember these. The 6 points in order are, and I have the story to go with each one, is the first one is be a good listener, some points on that. The second one is entertain criticism. And the third one is, this has more of a Robert E. Lee thing at Gettysburg, but accept responsibility for what you do and don't do well. The fourth one, the fourth point is going to be another funny story there, but it's going to be, I call it, not casual, I call it, it's optimism, but it's logical optimism, not like wild optimism.
Sure.
It's going to be about why you should be optimistic. Then comes gratitude. That's played a huge part in my life in my later years. I was pretty dumb about it in my younger years. And then the last one is faith. I was 40 when I came into the church, so my faith has meant a lot to me. It was quite a journey.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that attracted you to the faith?
To the faith? Well, I was at West Point for a year and a half, and my roommates were both Catholic, and you had to, back then you went to chapel. First year I went to the Protestant chapel, the big chapel. Second year I went with them to the Catholic Church chapel. And so I wasn't really a member, but you could go and just sit and listen. So I did that. And then my next exposure came about because 2 women, my wife was out of town. I was looking for a church for us to go to because the church we'd been to, which will remain nameless, was going over the deep end in terms of their doctrine and stuff. And so 2 women came to the bookstore and said, Chris and Trudy came to the bookstore. I was friends with them, both Catholics, and they said, Jeff, you should join the men's Catholic softball team. You don't even have to be Catholic. And I said, well, I'm not going to join the softball team, but I'm going to come to Mass on Sunday.
There you go.
And when I walked in, it was partly, I think I credit the Eucharist. It's a little country Catholic church. It's not like it was like some gorgeous big cathedral or something. And as soon as I left there, I asked Trudy and Chris, well, how do you become Catholic? I called my wife. She was a little shocked because she came from Milwaukee, where you were either Lutheran, Jewish, or Catholic. And so when I came to the church, which was within the next year and a half, she took 10 more years before her death in 2004. And 2 years before that, she became Catholic. And I would venture to guess knew as much as the priest did.
Wow.
She really got into learning about it. So
that's great.
Anyway, so it was just such a blessing for our family. My kids all went to Christendom College. I didn't know about Benedictine then, and have all just all practice the faith to this day and all this stuff. So, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So
I love stories of just those little small acts of grace that
I
happen
do
in
too.
your life.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the St. Paul at Damascus falling off the horse moment. It's just kind of small things that awaken the wonder and awaken the heart to the reality of the faith. That's great.
Yeah, I love hearing other people's stories about coming to the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, I really like, especially your second point on entertaining criticism, because it seems to me that today, that is something that, there's plenty of criticism to go around, but it seems as if we want to shy away from it as much as possible. We don't want to face it head on. So what is the advice there? Like why should we really face it and maybe even embrace it sometimes?
Okay. Well, should I just tell you the story?
Sure.
Okay. I used to teach homeschool seminars. I made a living doing that for about 15 years. We homeschooled our kids. After Chris died, we had a bed and breakfast bookstore. I sold that and moved with my 9-year-old to Asheville, which was nearby where I was already teaching, and expanded that. Anyway, so I taught these classes, and I would get older students to help me do the younger classes. They would grade papers. I paid them and stuff like that. They would grade papers and help conduct the classes. If I had to divide the class into 3 groups, 2 of them might take the other group, and it was good for them, and it would really help me. And so one day I was standing in class with this student named Miller. I won't give her last name away. That was her first name. And so we're standing there. She's standing behind me. She's very attractive. She later married one of my other students in the class. She was in 11th grade. The other class, the younger class, is about 7th and 8th grade. It was called 3 R's, reading, writing, and rhetoric. And so I'm opening up the class after we pray. We always prayed to start the class. And I opened up the class, and I said, okay, let me tell you a quick story. And to this day, I don't remember the story, which is probably good. I started telling the story, and suddenly I felt whap on my shoulder. Whap. And I was like, looked at her, and she pursed her lips and went. And so I just turned to the class and said, I guess we won't be telling that story today.
Wow.
And after class, I said to her, I didn't even ask her. I just said, that was to me a moment of criticism. And I said to her, I'd like you to work more for me, and I'm going to pay you more. And ever since then, I've thought to myself, it's a little bit like the ending of Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, which I'll repeat here. But I thought, Jeff, you'd be really a good guy if you had someone to slap you about every hour of your life.
I think we all would. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and in terms of, but here's the thing about criticism. There is bad criticism.
Sure.
But my editors, one of them criticizes me on a weekly basis, fortunately, because she and her helper catch a ton of mistakes in what I write and have better ways of saying things than I do a lot of times. Not always, but I'd say 90% of the time. And they're more neutral. And we both want the same thing. We both want an article that's good.
Yes.
So it's not like we're enemies.
Right.
And I know from talking to both my editors, I have 3 main editors, one for a different publication. They're all great in their different ways. And I know from talking to them that they get writers in there. I don't know why this just cracks me up for journalists to do this. I could see if you were a William Faulkner or Flannery O'Connor, but they'll get people who will argue about having to change a single sentence. And to me, it's like, you don't always change, but you at least listen to the person and go, oh, you know what? That is better than what I wrote. And I want to be looking good in print. So, so anyway, it's just funny to me.
Yeah.
So I,
a good breaking point. To cut it.
I tried to steady it.
I was just waiting for you to finish.
It swung away.
There we
I'm
go.
sorry. Okay.
It's all good.
Okay. You can tell I'm not used to this. You can tell.
All good.
So, anyway. Okay. Where is the camera, by the way? Is it looking at us this way?
We've got 3, and if you just look at me,
okay,
don't
just look
worry
at you.
about
Okay,
it. Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah. One more second.
Yeah, speaking of your writing, some of my favorite articles that I've read of yours from the Epoch Times are actually using historical characters or people to get across a message. You know, you recently had one on Jackie Robinson. I saw another one on John Adams and his integrity during the war. And I just thought that, you know, this man really understands history as a teacher. You know, have you long been a lover of history, or what is it about history that you tend to see so much clarity in these themes, or be able to bring them into the world today?
That's a good question. And I actually have loved history since I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
There was a series, they still have some out, but when I was a kid, there was a series that started being created in the 30s called The Childhood of Famous Americans. And if you can get an old copy, which usually comes bound in orange or sort of turquoise, they had like 200 titles in there.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they had people we've never heard of today.
Okay.
I mean, people who'd found, like Sears of the Sears store was in there. And,
Yeah.
and then they cut out, but it's still around, and they still have, I don't know how many titles, but not what they once had. So that first hooked me on history, and then for the rest of my time, all through school, I loved history. I could never understand classmates in high school or college who said, I just hate history. To me, and I think it's just the way they were taught it, and they didn't read outside of class. But to me, history is like a fabulous treasure house of stories.
Yes.
I mean, it's great stories, and they can guide you. And so I majored in history in college. I got my master's in history from Wake Forest University, and a year of doctoral work in medieval history at University of Connecticut. And then I left for different reasons. It wasn't from not liking history.
Sure.
It was mostly because my advisor said, Jeff, I know I can get you a job when you get out of here. It may be with the junior college up in Minnesota, or it might be down in southern Florida. And I just thought, I don't want to live my life where I'm being bounced around back like that, number one. And then number two, I had some personal problems that sent me. So I switched gears, but I always found the study of history to be invaluable for my whole life. I mean, when other people get mad about stuff in presidential politics, I'll think, that's nothing compared to what it was back, in the 1880s. Remember what they did? No, we don't. Well, and so it helped that way. It helped me look at things a little bit more rationally. And then I did end up teaching history to homeschoolers. I mean, it would always be history and literature, except for the AP classes, but so they could sort of get a 2-for-1, and they go together well. But so I just always, and I think we should learn lessons. And people are timid about doing that a little bit, but it doesn't mean you have to copy the lessons, but you can do what you just said, where you learn the virtues that you face the problems with, what helps get us through. And
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's such a good guide of the good and the bad that can come out of a virtuous person. I mean, a world leader, even like Napoleon, he had a lot of problems, but he also had a lot of drive, a lot of awareness, things that could still be goods in themselves, and we can learn from those things. I kind of compare it to even like learning your own family history. Right. You're probably going to have that one guy that stole horses and was a little bit of a problem, but you also have somebody who discovered something amazing, and that's part of your lineage. And so these histories of these people, regardless if you're American or European or not, it's just fascinating to learn their stories and what they went through, because it gives you more gumption of like, well, if another human being can do this, then I can too. But I think you're right too, that it also sets up where you have situations in your life where you have bad political representation or something bad going on, even in the church sometimes. Like, but I mean, in comparison, this is definitely handleable.
Right. And then one thing you touched on there was, and this just drives me nuts, and they've come up with a word even, and two things drive me nuts about the way we're handling history right now in this country as a culture, not historians individually. Sure. And the first one is nuance. We just lack nuance because enough people don't know history anymore.
Yes.
So we take someone like Robert E. Lee and we tear him apart, we tear down his statues, and I could tell you stories about Robert E. Lee that make you go, oh, well, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. Actually, people like Dwight Eisenhower, FDR, all these people who are like this on the political spectrum are full of compliments about him, written compliments. So nuance is one, and the one that just drives me crazy, like since in the last, say, 6 or 7 years, is presentism, is what it's being called. We judge everything in the past by our present. What a horrible mistake that is. And if we keep that up, another 50 years, they're going to be judging us by that.
Yes.
They're going to be asking questions about, I won't get explicit here, about stuff we did, and they'll be horrified. They'll be thinking, what were they thinking? You know what? You probably got some idea of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's as if we think we belong in this super enlightened age,
Yes.
where the people in the past just were all looking backwards, you know. But I mean, say that to Aristotle.
Yeah.
Go read Aristotle and say that he wasn't enlightened in some capacity.
Yeah. Well, when I used to teach homeschoolers the history courses, we'd study like some Roman massacre of a city. I'm just going to make this part up. The 30 Years' War, and they'd be just like, "Oh, I can't believe people were doing that." And I would say, "Look at the 20th century. It's the bloodiest century by far in world history. We killed tens and tens of millions of people. Communism alone killed 100 million.
Right.
I mean, and we sort of need to get a grip."
Yes. Yeah, and I blame some of that on the scientific progress that has happened so quickly, so fast, that we think just because we've reached this level of science that somehow they were backward, you know, back then. But also the tensions have just changed over time. You just have the realities of culture that shift over time, right? Like American culture now is very different than it was even 100 years ago. But that doesn't mean 100 years ago it was worse.
Right.
Right? Things just shift. Things get, our standard of living has gotten better, sure, but our morals have certainly dropped. You know? So what do we mean by best, or what do we mean by better in that sense?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you said 100 years, actually, since I was a kid.
How much has changed?
I'm 74 years old, so that's a ton of time. It always makes me smile because I'll be reading about some event or getting ready to write about it, and to me it seems like yesterday, and then I'll say, "Jeff, that was 50 years ago."
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. We've got this thing where not only have things shifted, but then, as you said, we look back and think it was worse, where it wasn't worse. Now, the 50s and 60s were worse in ways. You could take race, for example. I was born in Pennsylvania, but grew up in North Carolina. My parents did not approve of segregation. But when we first lived there, it was real. I mean, I was a kid. I'm like 8 years old. You're not going to notice too much, but you still see it. And so that was worse, but a lot of things are worse now than were back then. So, I mean, you're right. And I do like what you said, too, about science. We've just come to almost substitute that for God, really. I mean, in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard because it is, scientific progress is good. We should continue to dig into it. But when it turns into a deity that we worship, or something that we start to see as the only answer to all questions of life, you know, that can't answer questions like courage or love or honor, these kind of, you know, perennial questions that you have to get into philosophy, theology, the humanities, things like that. So, you know, I love to ask writers about your process, you know, the process of how do you come up with the ideas? What's your process of sitting down and actually getting the article going? And I just love to hear kind of the creative process.
Okay. It's funny because someone on campus just asked me that about an hour and a half ago.
Okay.
So we're on the right track. It depends sort of on the article. Like the history articles, I write 2 or 3 different kinds of articles. I used to write opinion articles more. I still write a few of those for a group called Intellectual Takeout. Mostly for Intellectual Takeout, they're still sort of opinion ads, but they're cultural instead of political. And then I write for Epoch Times, Life and Tradition, which are feature articles. I've already come up with 2 or 3 ideas to write about Benedictine because they just have some neat programs here that readers would love to think about. And the articles I write in the feature articles are supposed to inspire readers, give them hope, and give them knowledge. That's the 3 things that have been drummed into me there. And I do it all the time now. And then I write arts and culture. So for the arts and culture articles, like a history article, I usually explore books. Like the next article I'm writing for them, it's due Thursday, is Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, in his Western years from about 1885 to 1888. He went to the Badlands of North Dakota. I mean, his wife and his mother died on the same day in the same house. When he's young. He's a young guy at this point. She died in childbirth. His mom died of pleurisy. I can't quite remember what disease it was. And then his political career was in sort of dire straits. So he was going through a mess, and so he thought, I'm going out west. And so he went out there and led the life of a cowboy for 2 or 3 years. And so that's how I get those ideas. The rest of the ideas, for the most part, I get a few online. Like I'll see an article, let's say it's on reading, and low rates in our major cities, the reading levels keep dropping. And I'll write an article suggesting some ways, some of which are my ideas and some of which I find online as well, and give credit always with links. To how do you improve reading? I mean, I because of 2 of my editors in particular, one at Chanelli at the Epoch Times, Annie at ITO, Intellectual Takeout, I can't, I've lost the ability to write a negative article. For 3 years, 2019 COVID, up through the presidential election, 2020, big mess. Again and again, it was, Jeff, you can't write negative articles. You need to end with positives. And now all I can do is write with positives, which I guess is a positive.
I mean, I think we need more of that in the culture, to be honest.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
So my point is those ideas come some from reading online, and then I just I don't know. You can call it a muse. You can call it what you want to, but I'll just be hanging around, and an idea will pop in my head. Usually it's about 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning.
Okay.
I get up pretty early, and I'll go outside and have a cup of coffee and look at the stars a minute, say a prayer of gratitude for being here still, and then I'll go, oh, yeah, this idea, it might be, so I don't know where they come from sometimes, but I'm grateful.
Yeah. I love the ending in the positive. I think that our culture has way too much negativity, and so I love that aspect of sort of the optimism, right? That we can be optimistic even in harder times.
Yeah, that's what we talked about my talk, cautious optimism.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think is needed.
Great.
It doesn't mean you go crazy, but you be optimistic. Otherwise, if you believe you're going to be defeated, you'll be defeated.
It's over.
Yeah,
yeah, the war's already lost.
Yeah, I've never heard a basketball coach say, or a football coach say, guys, go out there in the field, don't get hurt, lay down if they come at you. They're going to whip your, no matter what. So nobody does that. You look for ways to win.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
You got to have some hope.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So also, I wanted to talk to you about your previous book on movies and masculinity.
Oh, yeah.
I really thought that was fascinating, and I've had a long interest in reaching young men, and I also love movies as well. So what is some of maybe your thesis or the desire to write that book?
The desire to write it was, you just hit the nail on the head when you said to help young men.
Okay.
Because I was already... This was before I started even writing for Intellectual Takeout, but I'd been writing book reviews for about 25 years before I quit about a year ago for the Smoky Mountain News, North Carolina. And I would write for other publications, Chronicles Magazine, a couple Catholic publications. But the more I read and things like this, the students I taught didn't have this problem to the same extent. They were homeschoolers, and some of their parents were divorced. But most of them had mentors, dads in the home. They had grandparents active in their lives. They had coaches. We had a pretty strong sports program in Asheville for homeschoolers. But I read about and how many young men don't have a dad these days and don't have mentors. And that it's like the number one leading cause, some people contend, for crime, even in the United States. And they're not going to read. Those kind of kids are basically you're not going to make them be readers, but everybody watches movies. And so I thought movies would make great mentors. So I started thinking of movies, and then that just you start investigating, one leads to another and things like this. And so the book is really aimed at about, kids in 14 up to even, they're not kids anymore, but young men from 14 up to 30, because it had a section that was actually fun to write, because I tried to be a little funny. I don't know if anybody else thought it was funny, but I did, about dating, what's the proper way to date women, about marriage. It had sections on handling your money. It's how did the movies show work, how did the movies show, and then the virtues, courage, the theological virtues like hope, charity, all this stuff. And there's tons of movies that you can
Yes.
learn. I'll just give an example. With the exception, I think it's Rocky V. With the exception of Rocky V, every Rocky movie has at least one lesson
Yes.
that has nothing to do with boxing too
You're
much.
talking a huge Rocky fan. So.
Yeah, me too. And they have a lesson that every kid, especially male kids, should learn.
Yes.
I mean, you probably saw Rocky VI then. Is that where he gives the speech to his son?
Yeah. Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, Rocky Balboa. I mean, that's it right there.
Yes.
It's a huge life lesson.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, every Christmas I watch at least 3 Rockies.
Oh.
It used to just be on cable, and it became a family tradition.
Okay.
And then now it's like, well, now every Christmas I have to watch Rocky. This is
Yeah.
just what I do. Yeah, I love the use of movies because I've heard it said that to reach a child, it's one thing to reach the intellect, but it's a whole other thing to reach the imagination. And movies are innately going to grab the imagination, especially movies like Rocky or Braveheart or some of these other more inspiring films that make you want to be a good man. And so to see those as opportunities, I just think that's prime because it really can reach and change a teenager's life. Some of these films can, and I think that we really need to pay attention to that.
Well, yeah, that's where the idea came from. And then I think I end the book with Groundhog Day.
Okay,
And
another great movie.
It's another great movie, and that's one. Charles Murray, who's a social, social commentary is his main thing, but he wrote a book called The Curmudgeon's Guide to Success, I think it is. I've given that to several graduates, and it's a little teeny book, and it's got some great advice for graduates. But one at the very end of his, he goes on 3 or 4 paragraphs saying you should watch Groundhog Day every year.
Wow.
I don't know if I could do that, but I've watched it a bunch of times, and it does. It's about that movie reaches Catholics, Buddhists, you name it. I mean, because it's about fulfilling your potential. I mean, some. I'll make one more statement. Someone to me once made. He's from the Netherlands, and he was a Danish theologian. I mean, he was Dutch theologian, and he said, Christ didn't come to make Christians; he came to make us fully human. And I think being the saint is what we're intended to be and fully human.
Absolutely.
And so there's nothing inhuman about being a saint.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's especially during a time in the culture where, especially sitcoms, really don't show men in a good light very often. A lot of times you have deadbeat dads or just absent fathers or kind of idiots, in a way.
Advertisements too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so to say, well, there is another place to go see what men can do. I think of a movie like Master and Commander, just perseverance and the drive you have to be able to go on that kind of adventure. I don't know if we have it anymore. I mean, like that was a whole era of men willing to go out into the sea and maybe never come back, just to explore and find new things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just...
Well, I just found out this morning, your campus guy was showing me around, and I had no idea that Lewis and Clark had camped just up the river here. And I was saying to them, I just can't imagine doing that. I mean, we're sort of spoiled. I mean, I would just be saying the whole time, I miss my showers. I want coffee.
Exactly.
These bugs are driving me nuts.
Yeah, I remember when I moved here, I immediately thought, because there's a specific spot where it shows that they crossed and they came up and over. And I thought, how would you even get the boat from the river up here? I mean, that would take 20 men to carry that thing and all heaving and hoeing the whole way. I mean, I can't even imagine that. And not knowing what's on the other side of it. If there's something going to kill you or
right, exactly.
where you're going to get your next meal. So, well, this has been great. The last question I usually ask our guests, we have our mission here of transforming culture in America. That's what our rally cry for our students. So I love to ask our guests, if you were to offer a piece of advice on how people can go into the culture, transform it for the good, give it a good, healthy, holy cultural transformation, what would be a piece of advice?
Okay, that's the wonderful news I'm bringing to your students at the end today. And I've been very impressed with the program here about transforming the culture. That's another great story I hope to do. Sorry, I'm starting to stutter even saying this. In our culture, I've interviewed, let me start again. In our culture, I've interviewed about 50 people, about 30 homeschool moms when I worked for Seton Homeschool Magazine, Catholic magazine, and then about 20 to 30 people for Epoch Times. Mm-hmm. And these were people most Americans have not heard of, but they're doing incredible things. I'll just mention two. Karen Olson, a woman in New Jersey who back in the late 80s founded a group called Family Promise. I don't have time to go into it. Starts with she and her two sons feeding homeless people sandwiches. Today, Family Promise helps thousands of homeless families. Not homeless families. Wow. Get off the streets, get it restarted. And then on the opposite end in terms of size, Jeannie Schindler, a Catholic in Maryland. I think she teaches now at the JP2 Institute. She's a mom. She became concerned about cell phones. She read Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, which I would encourage your viewers to read. But Jeannie founded the Postman Pledge. It's named after Neil Postman, not the guy who brings you your mail. And you take a pledge with a group of other adults that you're going to cut down on cell phones. It's very specific what you do, and then you get together with that group 2 or 3 times a month for like a festivities, not any big thing, but just to enjoy being alive. Yeah. And so there's things like that, and they're all over. And the thing is, it's a feast of opportunity. Anybody who wants to, if you've got an idea, you're at the right moment right now in history, especially if it has to do with reviving the family, practicing the Catholic faith, helping with education. You can do little things, big things. You can, and this is going to sound sort of funny, but I've known couples who are doing huge things just by having a happy marriage and raising 5 or 6 kids. I mean, that's to take like Benedictine. Mm-hmm. People would go, well, your college is so small. What kind of effect can you have? Believe me, come back and ask. If you keep it up here, come back and ask that question in 20, 30, 40 years, and you'll see what kind of effect it's had. Yeah. I mean, that's not being an optimist. I'm being a realist. Yeah, if you keep putting out kids like you're putting out here, it's going to change the culture eventually. Wow. People, because they'll inspire others.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, that's my take on that.
Well, Jeff, this has been absolutely wonderful.
Oh, good.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your work.
Thanks for
Thank you so
having
much for your writing and coming to campus. I'm sure you'll hopefully come again soon, and
yeah,
we'd
I
love
hope
to
so
follow
too.
up on the conversation.
Definitely want to come back. It's lovely out here.
Wonderful.
So, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
We hope you enjoyed the Benedictine Dialogues, a production of Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. To catch all the latest and support our growing platform, visit media.benedictine.edu. And be sure to recommend this show to your friends and family. Help us to transform culture in America, one conversation at a time.